Okay, well, recording. Hello, everyone. This is the 5th Epical Revelation Fellowship. I'm Reverend Dr. Roger Paul. And tonight, or this morning, we're going to continue with our study on the Foreword. And that's on page 9.3. And we're in section 6, Energy and Pattern. And let's say a little prayer and we'll get started. Father, thank you for this time together, and thank you for these people that tuned in at home. Thank you for those that can make it here. Pray that you open our hearts and our minds and speak to us this morning, that we might learn something to take out around to other people and help it benefit our lives. Pray that you'll help us listen for your voice and the thought adjuster in our daily lives, that we might fulfill your will in our lives. Pray that you watch over our family and our friends. Bless us. We give you the praise in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Okay, energy and pattern. This is in the foreword, the 6th section, first paragraph, page 9.3. And Jill, why don't you start today reading for us?
Energy and pattern. Any and all things responding to the personality circuit of the Father we call personal. Any and all things responding to the spirit circuit of the Son we call spirit. Any and all that responds to the mind circuit of the conjunct actor we call mind. Mind as an attribute of the infinite spirit. Mind in all its phases. Any and all that responds to the material gravity circuit, centering in nether paradise, we call matter. Energy matter in all its metamorphic states.
Okay, so let's go over here to another slide and talk about this. This is from our study of the Master Universe, right? And this is the circuits they're talking about in this first paragraph, right? The personality circuit of the Father, which returns to the Father. The spirit circuit, in blue, returning to the Son. And this gold color, this is the mind circuit that returns to who? The infinite spirit, right? And if we look over here, we see the Isle of Paradise, and this is the physical gravity circuit, which returns energy to paradise, right? Emanates through neither paradise, okay? And that's what they're talking about in this first paragraph, right? And we've already studied this, right, in the previous stuff we've done. So let's keep going here. Back to the previous one. Okay. Dawn, you want to take the next one?
Energy we use as an all-inclusive term applied to spiritual, mindful, and material realms. Force is also broadly used. Power is ordinarily limited to the designation of the electronic level, material or linear gravity responsive matter in the grand universe. Power is also employed to designate sovereignty. We cannot follow your generally accepted definitions of force, energy, and power. There is such paucity of language that we must assign multiple meanings to these terms.
So this is part of what the foreword's about, isn't it? It gives us kind of an explanation of some of the things they talk about later in the book. And this is the perfect example of that. Especially this, when they're talking about energy, the spiritual mind, or the material realms, we don't have separate words for each one of these, right? So they have to use what we have to work with. And the same thing with power. Power we can think of, you know, in essence, is we could consider linear gravity power, response to matter, that sort of thing. Or we could think of the power that someone obtains through being in control of things.
Powers that be.
Powers that be, right? And so that's just a good example of our multiple uses of the terms we use, that they have to basically make allowances for us. Okay, so let's keep going. Linda, would you take the next one? Actually, take the next two because it's short.
Physical energy is a term denoting all phases and forms of phenomenal motion, action, and potential. In discussing physical energy manifestations, we generally use the terms cosmic force, emergent energy, and universe power. These are often employed as follows.
Okay. You want to take the next one?
Cosmic force embraces all energies deriving from the unqualified absolute, but which are as yet unresponsive to paradise gravity.
Okay, we've talked about this before, haven't we? The unqualified absolute and this cosmic force they're talking about. This is what the unqualified absolute uses to do what? Arrange that primordial matter. This is before gravity takes over, right? Paradise gravity takes over. And we know that this unqualified absolute is what? It's a non-personal deity, right? Okay.
It's also potential.
So it's potential, that's right. It's where all potential really comes from, right? Let's keep going. The next one. Emergent energy. We're back to you, Jim.
Emergent energy embraces those energies which are responsive to paradise gravity, but are as yet unresponsive to local or linear gravity. This is the pre-electronic level of energy matter.
Now this is an interesting paragraph. Why? Because we're talking about, they're talking about paradise gravity, right? Which goes out to all the super universes into some of the outer space levels, right? And then they talk about local or linear gravity. Isn't that kind of interesting? So they talk about it like it's a separate entity from the paradise gravity. So when the Creator Sun sets up the local universe and the creative Mother Spirit, they use the forces probably of the paradise gravity and manipulate that into the linear gravity with whom? That would be the master physical controllers, right? That makes sense? So when you talk about gravity, many times you have to explain which one you're talking about, because paradise covers everything. The local linear, what we'd see like in the planets, keeping the planets going around the solar systems and that sort of stuff, that's probably more of a domain of whom? The creative Mother Spirit and the master physical controllers, right? So, okay. Let's keep going.
3. Universe power includes all forms of energy which, while still responding to paradise gravity, are directly responsive to linear gravity. This is the electronic level of energy matter and all subsequent evolutions thereof.
So that would include all matter, right? All the electrons and what keeps our body together too, wouldn't it? So that's what they're talking about here, the universe power. Now who has a big part in controlling that too? Our local universe Mother Spirit, right? She uses what? She uses the resources of the infinite spirit, right? Okay. See, all easy. Okay. Let's keep going. Linda?
Mind is a phenomenon connoting the presence activity of living ministry in addition to varied energy systems, and this is true on all levels of intelligence. In personality, mind ever intervenes between spirit and matter. Therefore, is the universe illuminated by 3 kinds of light: material light, intellectual insight, and spirit luminosity.
Okay, and this is the domain of whom? The infinite spirit, right? Okay. This is really, really very important how they drop this stuff in just out of nowhere sometimes, you know. Especially this illuminated by 3 kinds of light. Had you ever thought of that before? You know, we have a physical life, which would be what? The material light, right? Then you have intellectual insight, so that would be illumination of the mind, if you think about it.
When the light bulb goes off?
Like the light bulb goes off, right, exactly. And spirit luminosity, and this is the natural luminescence of being what? A spiritual being in the circuit of God. Isn't that nice? So that's the 3 types of light. So when they talk about this light, many times they will explain which one they're talking about throughout the book. They mention this in several places. So it's the limitations of our language, really, isn't it? Okay. So let's keep going. light.
6.9 Light. Spirit luminosity is a word symbol, a figure of speech which connotes the personality manifestation characteristic of spirit beings of diverse orders. This luminous emanation is in no respect related either to intellectual insight or to physical light manifestations.
Okay, so that's the spirit luminosity. That's being in connection, that personality connection with what? The spirit circuits, right? The diverse beings within the spirit circuits, right? Okay. Let's go on. Jill, can you take the next one?
Pattern can be projected as material, spiritual, and mindful, or any combination of these energies. It can pervade personalities, identities, entities, or non-living matter. But pattern is pattern and remains pattern. Only copies are multiplied.
Okay, where does pattern come from?
Paradise.
Paradise, right? And we see here it can be what? Mindful, spiritual, or material, right? So all three aspects of reality, the pattern for all reality comes from where? Paradise, right? So if you think about it, we as human beings are copies of the concepts of paradise, if you think about it. Right? So what did the Creator Sons do? Their creation are variations of those copies, right? Now this is interesting too in the sense that even in the domains of what they do, they use paradise as the patterns, just like the infinite Son, or the primary Son, God the Son, was the pattern for all the 700,000 Creator Sons, wasn't he? He went through 7 bestowals through Havana, right? So he set up a pattern for whom? The Creator Sons. So the Creator Sons copy the pattern of the God the Son, right? So this pattern goes all the way through the book, over and over and over and over again. All right. All right.
Pattern may configure energy, but it does not control it. Gravity is the sole control of energy matter. Neither space nor pattern are gravity responsive, but there is no relationship between space and pattern. Space is neither pattern nor potential pattern. Pattern is a configuration of reality which has already paid all gravity debt. The reality of any pattern consists of its energies, its mind, its spirit, or material components.
Okay, let's break this one down a little bit because it's kind of interesting. All right. It says here first that gravity is the sole control of energy matter, right? All that's material, right? That's pretty simple. Neither space nor pattern are gravity response. Now isn't that interesting? You know? So the space out there in between all this is not responsive to gravity.
It's emptiness.
It's emptiness, right? It's like a void.
Seemingly
Seemingly empty, right? But in the pattern, which comes from paradise, is not responsive to what either? Gravity, is it? You would think it would be, but it's not. But what is, and it goes on to say there's no relationship between space and pattern. Space is neither pattern nor potential pattern. So even though you have a space out there, there's no pattern in it, is there? If you think about it. That pattern is superimposed on empty space, isn't it? Right? Okay. Pattern is a configuration of reality, and it's already paid all gravity debt. Now, why would that be?
Yeah, I don't understand that term. Why paying gravity
Paid
debt?
all gravity debt, because pattern is from paradise. So paradise is non-responsive to gravity. That's where gravity comes from, is paradise.
But why saying paying debts?
It
What debt?
paid all, in other words, it was created by God originally, and so even though it's a different, really, in essence, it's a different type of matter. It's monada instead of regular energy, right? I mean regular material. So when it says it's already paid all gravity debt, it's already been manipulated to the maximum of all it can. So it's paid all debt to gravity. So
balanced.
It's balanced. It can no longer be manipulated. You see what I'm saying? By gravity itself. The other interesting part about that is that since gravity comes from paradise, if it hadn't paid all the gravity debt, wouldn't it implode on itself constantly? Because if it was responsive to gravity, paradise wouldn't be stationary, would it? It'd be constantly have to replace itself. And it's not. Paradise is just paradise. The matter is called monada there, right? So the matter there is not the same matter as there is in the rest of the super universes, right? So it's a totally different type of reality if you think about it. You have to think kind of along the lines of the difference between finite, absonite, and absolute. Paradise is absolute, right? And as absolute, it is non-responsive to all these things, like gravity, right?
If I may, the way at least it is in my mind, the pattern would be, as an example, this computer over there, right? The pattern is the blueprint. There's going to be a board, there's going to be this device, and it's going to be connected this way, and this power, and this blah blah blah, all that. That's the blueprint. So that blueprint, when you see it on paper, or you see it in your mind,
is a pattern.
This is it's just it's a concept. There is nothing to do with material gravity, nothing to do with anything.
Right.
However, when you start talking about in this analogy, the gravity would be like the electronics going through the electric board and all the physical aspect of putting in place, executing that pattern.
Yeah.
So this is where, in that analogy, I don't understand that paying debts. I don't see where there is a debt to pay with respect to those electronics.
Think of it this way. Let's go back to your analogy. Let's say you had the blueprint. The blueprint, at some point in time, so far back in the future we can conceive of it.
Future or past?
Huh?
Future or past?
Past. Sometime in the past. That blueprint was created from an original. And the original was the original. That's right. Which was paradise.
Right.
And it's made out of a totally different type of matter. Now, think of it this way.
It's pre-gravity.
It's
pre-gravity.
Pre-gravity, really. If this computer was in paradise, it would be the absolute version of this computer, right? So, if it was responsive to electricity, it would work like a what? A finite computer, wouldn't it? But since it's not responsive to electricity or gravity, it will not work. It may function like this, but it's the perfection of this, right? So this may break down, but the one in paradise will not.
Okay, because it says that only copies are multiplied. You
Only
see, and the copies
copies
can be corrupted.
That's right.
The copies aren't perfect.
That's exactly right. You know, so we are in essence copies of what? Copies of paradise citizens, aren't we? If you think about it, we might not look at exactly like them, but what makes us a reality, our mind, body, our mind, our spirit, and Marancha soul, that's all part of what makes us copies of these absolute beings, right?
I think I may have, in terms of interpreting the copy here, to me it's not the pattern that is copied, it's the computer that is copied. So you multiply the computers, but the pattern is the pattern.
Yeah, the pattern
is the multitude of patterns that are out there, patterns are.
Yeah.
But then you make, out of the pattern, you make something that is in action somewhere in that world, whether it's a mind pattern, a physical, here it's a physical pattern we're talking about.
Yeah, now think of this too. When you're manufacturing something, think of a manufacturing plant. They have a pattern they go by, right?
Exactly.
And they'll create thousands and thousands and thousands of whatever you're creating, right?
Yes.
Let's say it's the computer. And every now and then somebody forgets a screw or something, you know? So that pattern, that particular unit is corrupted, right? Well, if you think of it that way, human beings are kind of like that too. Every now and then we run across one that's got a little screw loose, don't we?
Well,
and they're corrupted in some way or fashion. And where does that corruption come from? Probably rebellion, you know, in essence. So So it's a kind of a neat analogy if you think about it.
I would actually go further, if I may, is that we are design corrupted, right?
Yeah.
Imperfect. When I say by
Yeah.
corrupted, it's by design imperfect, so
Yeah.
that we all have more or less loose screws.
Yeah.
And then and I think that creates the tension in the mind world so that the mind
To
can
correct
work
it. Yeah.
to do the junction between the pattern and the spiritual light
Yeah.
and what's going on in the physical world and
Yeah.
try to get it happen
Get it
according to the
According
pattern.
to the pattern, right? Now, well, if you think about it, what is it in our life that makes that change possible? Experience, right? So that's the experiential part of God, right? Which is what? God the Supreme. Okay? So that little thing that is lacking in us is the thing, it's the void allows us to fill that void with what? God the Father, if you think about it. So, which, it's funny how this stuff always comes back together, doesn't it?
Right.
What you said about rebellion is so interesting because in paper 53, section 3, it says about Lucifer, he charged that the universal father did not really exist, that physical gravity and space energy were inherent in the universe. So there's your rebellion right there.
Yeah, that's the rebellion. Yeah, yeah. Which
There
weren't
it
true.
is.
Weren't true, was it? It is
No.
controlled,
Right,
right?
right.
Yeah. Even we know that as finite beings from what they tell us, right? It's not just inherent. If it was inherent, then everybody would go to heaven, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's
I
why
think
he
that's
said.
the whole point.
Yeah, that's why he says everybody will end up in heaven, and that, everybody will go on to the
It's
mansion.
just automatic.
Well,
It's
That's what he's
automatic.
supposed
No.
to.
Well, I'm not sure, perhaps, but the way I view it at least is more like an excuse to boost the ego and say, yeah, well, after all, what kind of proof do we have? After all, what kind of proof do we have that those teachings are true? So we can
Yeah.
always argue, either way, and
Yeah.
say, hey, now,
Yeah.
because of that, because we don't have any proof, okay, let's boot the ego and, let's
Yeah.
go. So,
It's part of the excuses, isn't it?
That's
and it's
right.
part of that big head syndrome.
It's part
which
of not being accountable.
not being accountable. That's right. Okay, let's go on. Reality practices. Okay, and it goes on to say that any patterns consist of energies, its mind, spirit, or gravity material components, right? And all of these things from the pattern, the energies, the mind, and the spirit, all have already paid all debt. So the perfection or the absoluteness of paradise mind, paradise spirit, and paradise gravity, all of these are perfect. That's why they call them the absolutes, right?
See, we haven't paid our debt yet.
We haven't paid our debt yet.
Because we
That's right.
haven't gotten there yet.
That's right.
That's where that debt comes in.
Yeah.
They're already perfected and we're not.
That's right.
The debt's been
That's right.
paid, in other words.
And
So that's interesting terminology that they put that in,
it is, and it allows us what? To grow, right? It's an experiential part again.
Right.
Okay, I forgot who you read last.
I think
Jill? Okay,
it's your turn.
it's your turn.
In contrast.
In contrast to the aspect of the total, pattern discloses the individual aspects of energy and of personality. Personality or identity forms are patterns resultant from an energy, physical, spiritual, or mindal, but are not inherent therein. That quality of energy or of personality by virtue of which pattern is caused to appear may be attributed to God, deity, to paradise force endowment, to the coexistence of personality and power.
Okay, so our individual aspects of energy and personality are in essence what? Innate by God, right? It's a gift of God.
Thank you, God.
Gift of God. Now what happens from the moment of birth with our personality? Each and every one of us is unique, right? They could put the same pattern in every single person if they wanted to, right? But that personality from the time of birth, due to our experience from that moment of birth on, we're unique, aren't we? That's why it's so important to the Supreme that every single person in the universe survives past this life, isn't it? Because that experience is a unique experience. It's non-replicable it's not non-replicable in the whole entire universe, because that particular pattern of personality from you came from what? Your experience. And that's why the experience of the Supreme is so important too. It's this experiential side. Because God could make us all perfect and we all think exactly alike, like little machines running around, you know. It'd get pretty boring, wouldn't it?
Okay, the Borg.
The Borg, that's a perfect example.
Existence is futile.
Yeah, that's right. But we aren't. We're all unique individuals. Now, what happens to that uniqueness if we don't survive?
Goes into the Supreme.
Goes in the Supreme, right? But that expression of uniqueness never comes again, does it? It'll be, and that expression of a person will come again, but it won't be exactly alike ever again. And that's what's so important.
Will that potential be realized in someone else?
In the Supreme, it will be, but not in someone else. That potential will always be new with each and every person. Okay? But that potential that made that individual that did not survive goes back into the experience of the Supreme, is not lost, but it doesn't have a personality expression ever again in that same exact way.
Can we infer from that paragraph that every personality is unique? I mean, no personality comes from the exact same pattern.
No, they all come from the exact same pattern. The personality.
Well, I'm not talking about the total pattern. I'm talking about the fact that...
But you can't say whether it's the personality part is a perfect copy or not, because that personality comes from God. He may vary that any way He chooses at any time, right? So He probably uses a human personality pattern for that, but gives you certain endowments that, you know, he could choose to do whatever he chooses to do within any individual at any time. Think about it, right? But they keep saying that the only true patterns come from where? Paradise, right? So do you think are we perfect patterns? No. We're copies
Well, I think
of
that's
copies.
part of what it's saying here.
Yeah.
An aspect of the total
Yeah.
pattern discloses the individual aspect
That's right.
of energy and of personality.
That's right.
Like, for example, we all have the same pattern. We have a head, we have two eyes, we have a nose, we have teeth, we have teeth, and blah blah, arms and... But that general pattern is all, apparently we all have, at least in this room, in very distinct differences.
Yeah.
Right?
It's not all balanced out the same
It's
way
not balanced
in
out.
everybody.
You know, and a good example of that, just on the physical level. Now, and I'm not talking about the mindal, spiritual, and all the rest, right? Just on the physical level, look at how many people do you know that you meet that look exactly alike? Not many.
Well,
you know, unless you're a twin, even the physical pattern of ourselves has variation. So you look at who's in this room, right? Every one of us has a very unique look to us. Part of that's from our heritage down through the years, from our parents and grandparents and things like that. But part of that, it may be from the individuality of your personal pattern. You know, you start to look more and more like what your personality is as you go through the mansion worlds, don't you? So what you look like physically will start to akin more to what you are spiritually. It's just on this earth where ugliness, beauty and ugliness don't matter. Yeah, because the beautiful people on this earth, a good percentage of them, are not very pretty people, are they?
On the
In the inside. But the ugly people, many of them are beautiful, beautiful individuals inside. Think about that. But what's even more interesting is even our physical appearance is so different from person to person. You know, that's the hard thing when people start painting. You can paint a nose and a face and eyes and mouth, but it's really hard to capture the essence of a person.
Expression.
An expression, you know, it's that variations that make a difference. And you can even trace sometimes a person's picture, you know, with onto a piece of paper, and even the tracing is not exactly what the person looks like, you know. There's something very unique about human beings. It's just
Do you think that there is perhaps a lot of depression and discontent on the mansion worlds because people there are actually revealed as a reflection of who they are spiritually?
There could be. The only answer I could have to that is you better straighten your life up when you get there. You know, the more beautiful your inside is, the more beautiful the outside is. You
I have seen that happen in the twins,
know?
and the way they evolve. And at first I couldn't discern them, and after a few years, there was a very distinct difference. And one was like blossoming, and
Yeah.
the other one was not so. And the one that was blossoming had a straight life.
Yeah.
So, but my question really is on this one is, are the personality pattern, you know, the way they are in us,
Mhm.
are they all distinct from each other? Like, or let's make it even more concrete. If you take twins, perfect twins, right?
Yes.
Do they have some difference in a pattern that is in them, right?
The personality pattern there probably is.
I suspect so, but I
Yeah.
don't. I suspect so, right? That's but,
Yeah.
but it's not 100% clear to me whether it is possible that there are. Or another way of asking the question is it possible that two personalities have the exact same personality pattern at first?
Well,
Yeah, I would think, yeah, that's possible. I would think that's probably likely, actually. But because what makes the change is they tell us is the experience, really. You know?
Well, yeah, these are the consequences.
Yeah.
The personality doesn't change,
Yeah.
right? What
Personality-
changes the actions and
Yeah,
the
but-
soul and all that.
Okay, but the personality grows. You see what I'm saying? From the time of conception. Your personality...
It does?
Oh, yeah.
It
Yeah,
says,
you-
I recall it's...
yeah,
okay.
your personality augments as you change, your personality changes, right? That's part of who you are. And through your growth process, in other words, as you learn more and you become more spiritual, you become what? Closer to the Morancha Moda in your life, okay? When you hit the mansion worlds. And so that's part of that moda comes from the personality, okay?
Right,
And
but did that
comes-
personality change in the process?
I
I
would
thought that
think-
was changeless. I seem to recall reading.
Well,
I guess
no,
we're reading
yeah,
that.
no. Okay, you're right, it's changes in the fact that person's personality does not change throughout all these incarnations. It's the same personality, okay? But that personality can grow. It's a changeless personality, but that does not mean that you can't go through a spiritual growth.
Yeah, but that's
that.
the spiritual growth. It
Yeah.
does go through the spiritual growth, but
Yeah,
you need... Okay, I guess...
yeah, we're splitting terms. and
yeah,
everything.
it's like... Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess...
There's always been a debate between, I mean, actually the way we were raised before Urantia book was that was the soul that was growing.
Yeah.
And so the new concept with Urantia is that God, gives each of us a personality, changes personality. So it's a different word that describes a different...
Yeah. I'm probably using the wrong term when I say the change part, because the change part is part of your experience. It's just like the Supreme, okay? But if you think about it, that affects your personality. You follow me?
Mm-hmm.
Your personality, who you are, is a result of what? Is partially a result of the experience you get through spiritual interaction, things like that. So that personality grows. You know, it's just like the Supreme's personality grows. The Supreme doesn't stay constant. It stays constant in some things, but other things, the experience makes it a stronger, larger growth type being, doesn't it? God the Supreme, right? It's not the exact same thing as the three absolutes of what? The Trinity. They do not change in any way, shape, form, or fashion, do they? They're absolute. That's why they call them absolutes. Everything else does change, though. Anything that's not an absolute does what? It grows and changes constantly. It's that growth that keeps us alive. That's why they call them absolutes. We will never be absolute. Well, we might come to the edge of absoluteness, what? When we get to paradise, right? Or get to a certain... We're still only 6th-stage spirits. Even when we become 7th-stage spirits, I don't think we'll become absolute beings. Why? Because we still have experience that we can have. Only time you get to the absoluteness is when you have lack of no possible growth any longer. And what's the only things that have that? Paradise Trinity, right? The unqualified absolute, the deity absolute. Okay, you follow me? These are absolutes that are non-changeless.
How do you call the paradise citizens? Are they absolutes? Or are
Yeah, the
they,
deities, the God the Father,
the-
God the Son, and
no,
God
the
the Spirit.
citizens, the paradise citizens.
They're called absolute citizens, yeah. They're perfected.
If you take a child,
They were created perfected, though.
something recently I had read about two young boys that were very, like 6 and 7, 6 and 7, something like that. They actually beat up a 2-year-old baby and totally killed it. And there are a lot of children that are in, different delinquent homes and incarcerated. But these two children were born with personalities.
Yeah.
And their choices, I don't know, to me, I have a conflict with that, because if they were born with a personality, did they have a deficiency, a physical deficiency in their brains, that allowed?
They made decisions that to do that. In other words, the question is this:
What do they?
is it pre-adjuster or post-adjuster? Because to kill that baby was a moral decision, wasn't it? And when you make that moral decision to take any life, it doesn't matter whether it's a human life or not, right?
Well, but at 7 years old, it was not necessarily a moral decision.
No, it is considered a moral
After
decision.
5, and
Yeah, anything, the first moral decision you make, the adjuster arrives, okay? And we can't really put our finger on what exactly a moral decision is, okay, at that age. But the first time they decide between right and wrong, that's considered a moral decision.
But it doesn't mean that everything you do is a decision. A lot of what you do, particularly at this age, and even still our age, for a lot of us, is reactive. It's not really conscious. When you are talking anything about a decision like that, you have thought about it, you made a plan, right? This is
That's the difference between just a reactive barbaric act.
right. But how is to say whether it was a reactive barbaric act? They were just playing and they didn't realize what they were doing. We don't know that, do we? Can we?
No, we can't. That's what I'm saying. We don't know for sure. Yeah.
We don't know what happened, like with these two boys, what happened with them. Maybe they were totally abused since they were babies, so how does...
They may have been mimicking something they saw.
Right,
Exactly.
so environment.
Environmental
had a
thing.
lot-
Not only that, okay, let's take that one step further, because this is really important. It may not be something they mimicked another human they saw. It could have been something they saw on what? Televisions, right? TVs, video games, things like that. People don't realize these things are teaching your children, right? The difference is these things have no moral values. You do, right? And that's where the importance is. So did these 7-year-olds, when they were growing up, see, Donald Duck beating up Daffy Duck? Who knows what sparked this on? And without that ability to make those moral decisions, they didn't think anything about it, right? And that's possible. What happened? We don't know.
Jesus talks about the tremendous influence that the environment has on a child.
Yeah.
I forget where he talks about that, but he's having a conversation with someone and he talks about, he's comparing two people and he says, this one was raised in this kind of environment and this one was raised in a different kind of environment and has a tremendous impact on who you are.
Yeah, and that's where it comes back to, it takes a village to raise a child, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's not only the parents that influences the children, it's those around them. So if they're around other young children that thinks violence is a norm, beating something or killing something, if this becomes the norm to them, there's no moral decision there, is there? There's nothing moral about it. They're just repeating a pattern of activity they've seen someone else do, right? So that's why we always come back to we can't really judge, especially with a child like that. Their motivations may have been something totally innocent, and they just ended up in a really bad situation, thinking this baby was just like something they saw on a video game or a TV or something, and it would be fine after they did it to them.
So I guess my point is, are all personalities that God gives to us, each individual, are they all equal?
May I make
I don't think so.
I
Sure, they'd
think
be
so.
equal, and I'm probably sure,
And that's
but then we're brought up on a world that's lost and confused, and
yeah.
parents that maybe shouldn't always be parents, and in places
Are
that.
you asking, Diane, do they have the same, does everybody have the same potential?
Right.
I don't think they do. I don't
You know,
think they
based on
do.
personalities and influence that a child personality is going to be born into, then the circumstances are always different, and so the
Yeah.
potential naturally would be different, you know, but
You know, something that point itself brings up an interesting question. You know, in our we say all men are created equal. We're not
No, we're
created
not.
equal. Not even close.
No,
Sorry.
that's false.
If you think about that, that's a totally false statement, because some people's potential, because of their situation, is so much greater than other people's potential, right?
And because of their genetics as
genetically,
well.
we're not created
No,
equal.
we're not
we are
equal.
spiritually
But
equal.
They're
We're
talking-
experientially
they're talking
equal.
about,
Spiritually.
in a way, they're talking
Spiritually,
about
well, in
spiritually.
experience we are too. How's that? Because we have the opportunity through the Supreme to experience our equal trip to what? Paradise, right? So in that sense, we are created equal, but not in the sense of all our opportunities, our bodies, there's really nothing equal about how,
Lifespan, yes.
yeah,
There are a
yeah.
lot of variations, but
So many
the
variations.
spiritual potential and endowment and
But
is-
not
is-
all the
is-
beings can be father fused. Some of them can only be son fused and
That's right.
spirit fused. So there's a,
So even in the spiritual realm, we're not completely
inequality.
equal, are we? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. However, you know, you think about it, if there's the opportunity to be sun fused or spirit fused or whatever, that gives every being an opportunity to what? Connect with the will of God in their life, right?
Achieve perfection to
For
their
achieve
extent.
perfection to their, extent they can,
Whatever
Right.
their potential is.
which is interesting. So,
May I make an hypothesis
sure.
about this dispute, because a lot of what we're discussing was the topic of asking some questions among. This is what, and we'll throughout the reading of the introduction and the rest, we'll see that it turns out to be, or how it has to be adjusted. What I'm inclined to believe is that two personalities do not exactly come from the exact same pattern. There is always at
Yeah,
least
I
a
would-
slight difference.
I would agree with you 100% on that.
Exact same copies, I doubt it. They can be very, very similar. There may be, there is a hierarchy of patterns, right?
Yeah.
But exactly the same, I infer or I postulate that that's not the case.
Yeah.
I will go further. I'll make a second postulation, is that all those personally coming from God, I cannot think that a personally was made on purpose to be evil and create evil.
No.
In other words,
No.
whatever evil that is going
No.
on, I don't think it's the source is personality.
No.
Which
No.
means that I'll postulate that all personalities can achieve, perfection and progress and make the right choice.
Has the opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
And the reason, therefore, those don't, it's other reasons, environmental reason,
Mhm.
right? And which ties to the fact that Jesus was saying, let's go win some souls. It's about getting those personalities
Yeah.
to get on track.
Yeah.
And I suspect that every single personality has the same potential of doing so. And those who don't versus those who do have to do with the environment.
I'll take you one step past that, Jill. When Jesus said that, the reason he wanted to go win souls was why? Because there was a possibility of what? Failing, right? There's a possibility that you never make the right decisions. There's a possibility that you do not survive. So
That's right.
that's why it's so important to win those souls, right? That's a big part of it. I mean, that was the number one thing that he did, was to spread the gospel, right? The fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. Being with the concept that these people will what? Survive as his life, right?
And I make the third postulate,
All right.
going even further than that, right? Well, again, I don't know if the answer is in the book, right? I have no idea. It's just an idea, right? Is that those personally that do fail and become annihilated,
Uh-huh.
So we know that the copy of the personality pattern, we know that that particular copy is gone. It goes to wherever it goes, annihilated. It doesn't
Exist
However,
anymore.
the postulate is that the same exact personality pattern will make its way in another personality.
It might.
So there will be another copies until every single of those patterns gets to the right way.
That's right. Now think about this too. If the pattern is paradise, all right, now we keep coming back to this, all right, and the book is full of these patterns all the way through it, okay? If the pattern is paradise, think of all the billions and billions and billions. How many billions can I put on there? Billions and billions and
Trillions
billions.
and zillions.
Trillions and zillions of being not perfected, but perfect beings on paradise, right? From which these patterns come from. So think of the variations of these beings on paradise, right? So an interesting concept is this: if we all come from patterns from paradise, we could all be from zillions and trillions of different patterns from paradise. So that may be some of the reasons of the variations of people too. You think about that?
No, it's
You know? It's an interesting concept.
and I suspect that there is probably a lot of intelligence is in taking a personality pattern with the DNA pattern, right?
Yeah.
It's probably not random.
Not a fit just right sometimes.
It may not fit it perfectly right, but it's probably not random. There must be a reason. And
there's rhyme and reason to it.
Right, and I would further postulate the personality coming from God, right? Directly from God, not like God the Father. I mean, it's just like it's not from any under middle way level, right? I suspect that whatever that the pattern, whatever we can think of pattern and the complexity of that can be, and its ability to exercise those patterns in a reasonable way, is on the physical world is probably a tiny fraction. I suspect. Another postulate, right? In other words, as we evolve through upper levels, that personality is still the same pattern, but the different aspects, more refined aspects, will start being activated, right? Only a very tiny fraction probably gets activated and relevant here in the physical world. The same for the thought I just by the way, right? Is what the capacity, the potential is compared to what we are doing here is
minute.
A minute fraction. Is just really the starting point. So there is so much that we cannot even fathom afterwards, right? So I think it goes hand in hand, and the key is to get those personality, and for us to get the environment for our children's, so that they do get to that point of
fusion.
And which means that when they don't, they got to be humble and say, okay, what did you screw up, and figure that out.
You know, the point I want to make sure y'all understand about this whole concept of personality is this. When they talk about the personality is changeless, okay, you have to keep in mind this. What they're referring to is, as you leave this life, go to the Morancha life, go to the spirit phases, the first phase, second phase, up to a total spirit being. The changes list they're talking about is who you are.
Yeah, you are still you.
You are still you.
Right.
They're not talking that your personality didn't grow and expand and that sort of thing. But that person who is in that being remains the same person. In other words, when you wake up on paradise, all your experience and all this information, you won't be a different person. You'll still be you, right? That is the changelessness of personality. It doesn't change from when you go from mansion world to mansion worlds to 590 phases of Morancha beings down to the first stage spirit to second stage spirit. That is what's changeless. It is still you. If they could put all your experience and all this stuff into another being and they pick up from where you were and go on, that would be what? Change, right? That's not what they're talking about. The changelessness they're talking about is you will always be you. You will always know who you are. You will always have the same relationships with people you've always had. And as you go from being to being to being, it's still you. It's not a different being, right? That's the changelessness.
I think,
right?
to help better understand this, I think because it says here that pattern is a configuration and that pattern pervades personality. So the configuration can change.
That's right, it can.
It,
And we do that, don't we? When we get
Yes.
a Maharaja being, we get a new what? Body, don't
yes.
we? We get a new, we create a whole new soul, actually, when we get to the Maharaja world, don't we?
I mean, even
And
you
that
know, our
soul
minds
becomes
and how
us.
we think about things and our
Mhm.
spirit and how we,
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
things change, but the personality does not.
Does not, that's right, yeah. That's the changeless
It's
personality.
kind
That
of the
makes
life
sense.
essence.
Huh?
The life essence.
The life
Yeah,
essence
the
of who
life
you
essence,
are.
yeah. Life essence to me is a more appropriate word. I have a hard
Yeah.
time with personality because I've always thought of that being soul.
I know, you know, we use personality on all the different,
Yeah.
A
And we
lot-
have this whole,
yeah, this whole
Enneagram,
kind-
And it's
Yeah.
very
personality
difficult to
traits.
understand.
And
It
then there's
is.
a difficult
concept.
Yeah.
personality,
Yeah.
so
We
you
tell-
want to
yeah,
blame
we tell-
God for someone being
Yeah.
difficult.
we say
It's-
our pets have personality, you know, and they do have
They do.
differences, you know. But that's not the same personality as the
No.
human soul,
No.
right? Okay. So, and they do have, they're different. And, you know, you take five animals and, you know, raise them all the same. Every one of them's going to be unique, you know.
Children the same.
Yeah.
And twins are different people.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are a twin. Are you a devil?
Let's keep going. We
No,
know
fraternal,
it's
but
been
we,
way
everywhere
too
we
much
go
time.
together, people know we're
Okay.
sisters.
I think it's me.
Okay. Go for it.
Pattern is a master design from which copies are made. Eternal paradise is the absolute of patterns. The eternal Son is the pattern personality. The universal Father is the direct ancestor, source of both. But paradise does not bestow pattern, and the Son cannot bestow personality.
Did y'all catch that? The original Son, God the Son, is the pattern personality, right? The first one. He's the original,
He's the original.
right? Everybody else, including all the beings that come, all the creator sons, everybody, not just us, every being that is ever created is what? A copy of the original pattern, right? Okay? And it says here, the universal Father is the direct ancestor source of both the eternal Son, right, and paradise. You got that? Okay. But paradise does not bestow pattern. All pattern comes from paradise, but paradise doesn't bestow it, does it? Who bestows the physical pattern of paradise? The infinite Spirit, right? Who bestows the spiritual pattern of paradise? The eternal Son, right? And who bestows personality?
Universal
Not
Father.
the Son.
Universal Father.
I mean, not the, yeah, that's right. Yeah, the universal Father. The Son cannot bestow personality, can he? Isn't that interesting? It's kind of almost strange. You would think, well, you know, he's the first copy. I mean, he's that part of God. He pulled himself from himself, like a thought adjuster almost, and made a equal being to himself. You would think he would be able to bestow personality, but he can't. Only the Father can. It's something the Father reserved for himself.
And all the personalities were created
From
back at the beginning,
from that beginning.
and they're just waiting until we're born.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope they're having a good time while they wait.
Well, they have no consciousness, do they?
It's just a pattern.
Just a pattern. That's right.
It doesn't live.
Yes.
It's a blueprint.
Okay.
The Supreme Being.
The Supreme Being.
The deity mechanism of the Master Universe is twofold as concerns eternity relationships. God the Father, God the Son, and God the Spirit are eternal, are existential beings, while God the Supreme, God the Ultimate, and God the Absolute are actualizing deity personalities of the post-Avona epochs in the time-space and time-space transcended spheres of Master Universe evolutionary expansion. These actualizing deity personalities are future eternals from the time when and as they power personalize in the growing universes by the technique of the experiential actualization of the associative creative potentials of the eternal paradise deities.
We could spend the rest of the week just talking about this one. Okay? But, okay, here we go. God the Father, God the Son, and God the Spirit are what? existential beings. What is an existential being?
Self-existent.
Self-existent. Always has been, always will be, right? Has been since the beginning of time, will be throughout eternity, right? Okay. God the Supreme, God the Ultimate, and God the Absolute are what?
It says actualizing.
Actualizing deities. You see that? God the Supreme, we've been studying in the evening, right, is the experiential part of God, right? He's created from the Trinity, okay, and he becomes the power personality that will rule all of the 7 super universes, won't he? He's just like whom to us? He's just like Michael, right? Jesus of Nazareth. He is the creator of our local universe. He created everything we know of with the creative Mother Spirit, right? So as Jesus is to us, right, the paradise is to the Supreme, right? Makes sense? Okay? Now, what's the difference between God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit, and God the Supreme, if that God the Supreme is that powerful? Because God the Supreme is the experiencing part of deity. God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit are not experiencing, are they? They're not experiential deities. They're absolute deities.
And God the Supreme is finite.
And the God the Supreme is in charge of all the finite existence, right? Okay? So, God the Supreme is not an absolute, is he? He's a finite deity, isn't he? Just like Michael is a finite deity, right? He was born perfect because he came from God the Son, right? But he is a God in sense of an experiential God, isn't he? You think of Jesus. He's an experiential part of the deity, isn't he? So, his universe is growing. He's experiencing this growth with his universe. So he's just like, he's inside the Supreme, isn't he? He's part of this, part of the Supreme. Okay. Let's talk about God the Ultimate and God the Absolute. Is not. Remember when we studied these? I wish I had that slide handy. You want me to take the time to find it real quick, y'all?
The ultimate is not another being. It's the Supreme will evolve into the ultimate,
No,
right?
it's a different one.
It's a different being.
It
It's
is?
Yeah.
It's a combination being. Okay, hang on.
God the Supreme goes into the Almighty Supreme.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring up this slide here. Let me see if I can find it here. Here we go. Let me back up here a little bit here. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Here we go. The ultimate Trinity right here. You see this right here?
Mm-hmm.
Who's this little person right here?
Supreme.
And it's part of what? The ultimate Trinity. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
All right? And that's part of the emerging of God, the ultimate, is it not? Right? This experience has to go into God, the ultimate, for the actualization of these deities. Okay? It also goes into what? What's this right here? Absolutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Experiential destiny. You see that? And what's involved with the absolutes? The qualified absolute, the unqualified absolute, and the universal absolute. And what is the connection with them? The Supreme. You see this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay? So these are what? These are experiential deities. They have to evolve through experience. Now, why is this so important with this? Because this is the control mechanism, this is the power source, the controller, the, in essence, creator of all 7 super universes, right? He is, for our concept, just like Jesus is our concept of God. He really is in our local universe. The Supreme is our concept of God for the 7 super universes. All right? And you cannot have an absolute experiential destiny without the Supreme. Now what does the supreme turn into? The supreme, huh? The Almighty Supreme, right? And eventually the ultimate, right? So as the 4 outer space levels start to be populated, God, the Supreme Being, comes into full fruition, right? As the 4 outer space levels comes into, what comes into existence? God the Supreme, right? And the Almighty Supreme. Each level increases the power of the Supreme. So the Supreme, once it's created, once it takes over, it is in essence the head of the 7 super universes and everything that comes after, because everything has to come back through the Supreme. That makes sense? But that's these connections they're talking about here in this. Where is it here? Right here. You see this? Well, God the Supreme, God the Ultimate, and God the Absolute, over here, right, are all actualizing deity personalities of the post-Havona epochs of time, space, and time-space transcendental spheres of the master universe evolutionary expansion. Okay? So what's God's the Supreme? God the Supreme is the first step, right? What's the second step? God the Ultimate, right? What's the third step? God the Absolute. And with each step out through the universes, it expands in power and glory, right?
Mm-hmm. Roger, in your chart, is God the Absolute and the Qualified Absolute the same name?
The qualified, yeah.
Qualified Absolute, the number 5 here?
Yeah. God,
is it God the Absolute?
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah. That's why it says down here, revealed spiritual absolute. Okay? Okay, it's God the Absolute. All right, which is what? Over here. Right?
So that's a Qualified Absolute, and God the Absolute are the same. Right?
Yeah, they are the same. Yeah. And let me tell everybody at home, this is the Universe Reality chart. It's Don Estes. This is not my chart. I've made some changes here and there, but it's Don Estes' chart. So, you can find it online. Or you can find it on our website in several places too. And another thing I mean to mention, I've got some new slides that I'm going to show you all this afternoon, and they will be out on the website when we get done this week too. Okay, so let's finish out these concepts of this real quick. All right, we know that they're actualizing deities, right, of the post-Havana epochs. What's the post-Havana epochs? As everything outside of Havona, right, the 7 super universes. The Havona epoch was what? Before the 7 super universes, okay? So this is the we're living in the post-Havona epochs of time and space, okay, in the master universe. Okay, and then it says these actualizing deity persons are future eternals. So are these deities they're talking about are for the future, aren't they? Mm-hmm. Okay, but are they created now? Yes, they have started now, mm-hmm. but their power will be when? In the following ages. Mm-hmm. All right, think of it this way. We talked about this a little bit Wednesday night about the Trinitized sons, right? The Trinitized sons are not of this universe age, are they? Mm-hmm. Okay, this is the same principle. Mm-hmm. Okay? They're of an expansion of another age. Okay? Actualizing deities are future eternals from the time when and as they power personalize in the growing universes by the technique of experiential actualization. There's that experience again, right? The supreme, of the associative creative potentials of the eternal paradise deities. So it's through the supreme these things can happen. You see the importance of the supreme?
That's like the conduit.
It's like the conduit to all future expansion. Mm-hmm. Okay? We can't stress the importance of the supreme too much. We really can't. And Jesus understood this. See, he understood his whole bestowal, and what he was doing was part of this deity expansion of the supreme deity, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go on. Let me get back to this other here. All right. Next slide. Who was it?
That's just.
It's Jill. Jill, you're up next. Okay.
Deity is therefore dual in presence. One, existential, beings of eternal existence, past, present, and future. Experiential, beings actualizing in the post-Havana present, but of unending existence throughout all future eternity. So the question I have here is, existential, is it only the three personality of deities, or does it include also the paradise citizens?
Includes paradise citizens. It includes all the absolutes. Okay? Which was what? The deity absolutes? Right? The universal absolute and the unqualified absolute. These are all
Well,
existential.
the unqualified absolute and the universal absolute, they are not personality, are they?
They're not personalities,
So
but they're
therefore-
existential though.
But not personal.
But not personalities.
So-
right.
Are they deity? No, they are not. The unqualified absolute is not deity, is it?
Huh?
Are they deities?
Not technically, because it's not a personality.
What about
Well,
the-
they call it a deity, yeah. They do call it a deity. But it's called an unqualified absolute. What makes it deity is the Father I Am. Okay?
Right.
It's part of the Father I Am. So that's what really makes it deity. But it doesn't have what? A separate personality.
Right. So therefore, they are not
Yeah.
beings. We
They're
can't
not
call
beings.
them beings. I mean,
No.
they may be existential. They may be.
Yeah.
But they are not. They are
That's
not
right.
beings.
That's right. Really, the only primary, that's why they call it primary and secondary. Okay? The only primary existential beings are what? God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit. The other three absolute, and okay, I take that back. A non-deity part of that is paradise. We can't forget that either, right? That's
Right.
part of the seven absolutes. The other three are secondary absolutes, if you think about it, the second level absolutes. Because why? Because these three existentials really were created first and existed first and will always exist first. The Trinity is really the only primary existential deities. Okay? The rest of them are secondary existential deities because they came after, but they will always will be. Okay? That's hard concept to understand. But the second part of this is the experiential. That means the actualizing in the post-Havana present, right? That's us now. This is after Havana. But of unending existence throughout all future eternity. So, experiential beings, that's us, isn't it? So what does that mean? That means we're unending, aren't we? We have a beginning, but we don't have an end.
Potentially.
Potentially. That's right. That's right. Potentially. Now, that's why I read a quote this week, and I wish I'd have written it down. It said, to the philosophers of the universe, and y'all, this is a very important statement. There is no such thing as an end. Think about that. Because even experiential deities goes on forever. Even experiential finite beings, if they accept the challenge, they have the potential to be forever, right? And that's where we are. We're the experiential, the actualizing post-Havana present, unending existence throughout all future eternity. The Supreme definitely fits in that. And who lives within the Supreme? We do, right?
So will we be deity at some point?
No, but we become part of the deity essence with the adjuster.
I was going
The
to say, because
adjuster
we have
is
a
our
part of
deity.
deity in us.
Yeah.
We are an expression of.
We're expression of deity.
Expression.
That's right. And we fuse with that deity. So God the Father gives us deity. We give God the Father what? Experiential. Finite. Right? That's how it works. And we're going to have to quit there because it's 12:30. Any questions on this? Is this stimulating enough for y'all today?
Very, very interesting.
Yes, it is. Let me put the slide up here. Oops. Let me go one more so I can. Right there. There we go. This is where we'll start next time. Father sense. Okay. Let's say a little quick prayer before we quit. I'm going to pray while you're drawing so we can wrap this up. Father, thank you for this time together, and thank you for this knowledge we have to share with each other. Thank you for this participation, that we've got interesting topics we can discuss. Pray that you'll bless our lives this week and help us take a little bit of this and use it in our lives and share it with others. Watch over our families and friends. We thank you and we give you the praise. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for joining us. Stop the recording here.